and welcome to this edition of Inside Tacoma. I'm your host, Randall Lewis. Our guest for our conversation today, City Council Member Ryan Mello. Welcome back.
Thank you, Randy.
Always great to have you here because you're so busy all the time. You're involved in a lot of stuff. Besides being City Council Member, but in addition to being City Council Member, you're like on the AWC board, you chair the Growth Management Policy Committee of PSRC, you have a full-time job. I mean, so it's, you keep very, very busy.
Pierce Transit Board.
Pierce Transit Board, yes.
Puget Sound Clean Air Agency Board.
Wow, that's a lot.
As an at-large member, one of the responsibilities traditionally is representing the city at all of these regional tables that really impact Tacoma. So it definitely keeps me busy, but lots of very important issues facing our city.
Okay, and let's start with Pierce Transit because there's a big decision has just been made. Pierce Transit's going to be as part of Sound Transit 3, which the voters of Tacoma approved. I like to remind people of that. Part of that project was a bus rapid transit line, the first one in Pierce County, from downtown Tacoma to Spanaway, largely all the way out Pacific Avenue. And some major decisions have now been made by the Pierce Transit Board about how that's going to actually work, right?
Yeah, so we've made a number of decisions over the past few months, including the alignment. So going from, like you said, Tacoma Dome Station to Spanaway, going along Pacific Avenue, that was a major decision. The other most recent major decision is the design of it and whether it's going to be side platforms, so side bus stations essentially, or largely median bus stations in the center of the lane. A lot like the light rail station you see in front of the University of Washington, Tacoma, or the History Museum, that center platform, that's the style or design for along Pacific Avenue for bus rapid transit. So we've, the Pierce Transit Board and the City of Tacoma's strong preference was these median platforms because for a number of reasons, including the data shows it's much safer for pedestrians to have that center platform as a refuge, we call it, because crossing 5, 6, 7 lanes of traffic is daunting for even an able-bodied person. So that island refuge is really important to calm traffic, slow down traffic, safer for pedestrians, and it just creates a more interesting space. It feels different than a normal bus, and that's what we really wanted. We wanted to be able to identify that this is something really special coming to the south and south end parts of the city to move people a lot more efficiently.
All right. Now this will run in a dedicated lane, not on tracks. This is not like light rail, but it's a dedicated bus lane that this will run on. And then, so the buses will, both directions will meet at these center platforms. And so people will go there. So I get your point about safety because you're only crossing half the street.
Exactly.
And not the entire 6 lanes or 7 lanes of Pacific Avenue. And I like the description of the feel because there's clearly a different feel if you ride Link Light Rail in Tacoma. The piece in downtown Tacoma on Pacific Avenue feels a whole lot different. It feels like a light rail system. When you get up onto Commerce Street and it's mixed in with the traffic and somebody doesn't know which way they have to turn and the train stops because they're waiting for the car.
Exactly.
It kind of loses some of the, well, why did we build this?
Yeah, that's another good reason for why we chose the center platform design. It's confusing for drivers, other people using the same street. It's when the bus is in the right turn lane, it annoys drivers because drivers have to stop, and it's confusing about can I be in this dedicated lane or not. It's just unnecessary confusion. The center platforms makes it a lot clearer about who gets to use that center lane. In this case, it's buses only. The other really great thing about this project is it's going for transit riders, it's going to cut down the time from Spanaway to downtown Tacoma by 20 minutes.
That's an amazing amount of money.
Significant amount of time savings for a transit rider. And the center platform design, it is part of that equation. It is about 3-ish minutes faster than doing the side platforms. That doesn't sound maybe like a lot, but over time that means a lot to someone running their day. So there's lots of reasons why we chose median platforms in addition to it being safer for users and pedestrians and it being quickest for transit riders.
So, and that, now, one of the reasons this is going to take 20 minutes off the time of a travel from Spanaway to downtown Tacoma is because it runs very frequently. Like, how often will it run?
Yeah, so at peak time, so peak, travel time and people are commuting, it'll run at 10-minute frequencies. There's a chance it can get more, but at the outset, it'll be 10-minute frequencies. Every 10 minutes, a bus will come. The other things that will contribute to its frequency and time savings is all of the lights along Pacific Avenue will be completely resynchronized, completely redone, and the bus will get priority. So it hits the intersection when it's ready to go. The light is ready to turn green. So that's a huge savings. These dedicated bus-only lanes will keep it from weaving in and out of traffic and having to compete with general purpose traffic. That's another major time savings. The other major thing is riders will pay at the platform instead of waiting for people to tap their Orca cards or pay their dollar bills to get onto the bus and waiting people to fumble through their purse to get on the bus. All of that transaction stuff happens at a machine on the platform, and people just load really quickly.
And there's no stairs.
No stairs, everything's flat, so it's easier for everyone with all mobility. People getting on with a bike or a wheelchair or a stroller get on and off much quicker and easier. So all those things add up to a lot of time savings, better frequency and convenience for riders.
Okay. Now, a lot of the focus has been on Pacific Avenue from Spanaway into downtown Tacoma, but it doesn't actually stop on Pacific Avenue. It does go to other places. I've seen the map, and it will go over to Tacoma Dome Station. So will it use like Puyallup Avenue?
26th Street.
26th Street.
And do a turnaround at 26th Street.
Okay. And that's where it will end, or will it go farther into downtown?
It'll the termini will be 9th, Commerce Street, not 9th area.
All right. Now, this route was picked because it's Pierce Transit's existing most efficient or heaviest used route. It's Route 1.
Yes.
That's correct.
Which goes from Tacoma Community College to downtown, Pacific Avenue to the Spanaway area today. Okay. So the new thing here is it's going to go to Tacoma Dome Station, which is a major transit center. So that'll be new. But as we just said, the Bus Rapid Transit project will terminate at 9th and Commerce in downtown Tacoma. So the rest of the Route 1 from 9th and Commerce to Tacoma Community College along 6th Avenue is not going to be Bus Rapid Transit, at least not for this first phase. So with that, it's going to have to break. So someone will have to transfer, and that's a concern.
Mode split, as they call it in transit world.
Yeah,
right.
it's not as convenient for riders, right? And it is the best ridership route of Pierce Transit. So it is a concern that Route 1 will terminate at 9th and Commerce, and how do we serve those riders best? And adding a transfer to their life is not ideal. So we're going to have to figure out how to make that the best transition possible.
Okay. So, and there won't be regular Pierce Transit buses running on that part of Pacific Avenue anymore?
There will be some. The Bus Rapid Transit line will come up on Market Street and approach 9th and Commerce on Market Street. But I believe other routes do serve Pacific Avenue.
Okay. So the regular buses will run in the regular lanes like they do now,
yes,
on whatever portions of Pacific they use. But this will replace the Route 1 portion
exactly.
on Pacific Avenue.
Exactly.
Have they come up with a name for it? I mean, I know these things are called something else, in like Eugene has a long series of success with Bus Rapid Transit through Eugene and Springfield, Oregon, and other places have as well. Seattle has a Bus Rapid Transit going into Snohomish County, I believe. They all have clever names.
Everett has, I think they call it the Swift line.
Yes.
King County Metro calls theirs Rapid Ride.
Right.
That's the fun part of the project. We haven't gotten to that fun part of the project. We're still in design.
All right. So it's great that major decision points have been made. When do people think? Obviously, this doesn't take as much construction as a light rail line does. So when do people think they'd be able to ride on whatever we call the Bus Rapid Transit line?
The goal is 2022.
Okay.
So not too far into the future. So 2022 is when we're currently planning for service to begin.
All right. And that is Pierce Transit. Even though Sound Transit is paying for it, Pierce
Part of it,
Transit, this is a Pierce Transit project, and that's why you were involved in the decision as you're on that board. The other regional board that you mentioned is the Growth Management Policy Committee of PSRC. And there's a lot of work being done there too, because we're in the process of updating our regional growth plan, which is kind of wonky stuff, but it really does determine where growth and jobs are supposed to be in the 4-county region that we live in, which is growing very rapidly. Even Tacoma is growing very rapidly now, after a period of not growing very much in the early O's, but that certainly has changed now. So we're going on through this process of updating this plan, which determines largely where growth is supposed to go, but also has a practical value because it determines where federal transportation dollars go, right?
Yep.
That's why everybody pays so much attention to this.
Those investments attract that growth and direct that growth. And,
Right.
and we've seen that play out over the past couple of decades, and that's what we're trying to set up for the future.
So right now we're in the kind of preliminary stages, like environmental studies of what this plan would look like, and the PSRC members will vote on this sometime in 2020.
Yeah, so the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Board that I chair, we're in the middle of lots of study and analysis at the moment, and have been actually for the past about year and a half. We plan on making a recommendation by the end of this year, and that recommendation will go through some very final analysis and final public comment for hopeful, the formal adoption happens at what we call the General Assembly. So June of 2020, the all elected officials from throughout Central Puget Sound show up to this General Assembly, and that's the very end date.
Right, and that's where the big vote is cast.
But a lot happens between now and then, and again, by the end of this year is when we plan on making a recommendation. But it's really important for Tacoma, right. And plan on 3 big things is where I'm keeping my eye on this big planning work for the Central Puget Sound region. One is decentralizing where jobs go, so figuring out strategies where all jobs are not just in downtown Seattle, but decentralizing job growth to Tacoma, Bellevue, Everett, Bremerton allows folks not to have to commute, as much or as many people to commute to King County every day for work. Secondly, focusing new growth along transit corridors, the light rail corridor, bus rapid transit corridor, right? We're going to be investing $54 billion plus in major transportation investments. In my mind, we have to make the most good of those and put people close to that. So we really maximize those public investments. And the third major thing I'm keeping my eye on is around displacement and limiting displacement. As we grow and these places become much more attractive because jobs are in walking distance or there's really rich transit options, people tend to get displaced from those neighborhoods because they become more interesting and more attractive for more users. So making sure that everyone can afford to live in these highly attractive places close to opportunity is a really, really important goal of the plan, and we're going to have really clear strategies to limit displacement and those other things that I just talked about.
And we have actual local examples of that when you look at the change. If you ride Central Link into Seattle and you go through the Rainier Valley, you can see the changes that Central Link's presence there has made in that community. And so that's the kind of, and there was no planning at that time about worrying about displacement.
Yep.
And a lot of displacement has occurred in that area. So that's what we're talking about, making sure that does not happen as light rail is extended further into Tacoma, further into Everett and other places in the region.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. So I think those are all very worthwhile goals. And so, again, I want to point out that while people think this is kind of wonky planning stuff, it does actually determine where federal transportation dollars go for projects. And this big General Assembly thing that people will get together and vote, I've been at one of those where that group of hundreds of elected officials voted whether or not the third runway would be built. Even though the Port of Seattle was the one going to build it, they had to get the region's approval to do that, to get the money. And there was a big vote as to whether the third runway would be built. Yeah. Big decisions get made at these General Assemblies and very big votes, and they don't get the attention they really should get. But it is a big
regional
approach to major projects.
Yeah, as you mentioned, literally $250 million, $250 million a year gets in transportation investments get allocated through the Puget Sound Regional Council every year. Other major decisions like a third runway and countless others that folks don't connect the dots necessarily to that come out of the Puget Sound Regional Council. So that is why folks like myself and Mayor Woodard spend a fair amount of time working with our peers throughout Central Puget Sound, because these relationships and these issues that take a long time to navigate their way through the process really do matter for Tacoma, and we need to be aggressively at the table advocating for our interests, and that's why we believe it's worth our time and energy to do so.
Right, and there are allies. I mean, I learned this in my job working with legislative bodies, but also in regional issues. There are allies, people who feel the same way or have the same needs or similar needs in other cities up and down the Puget Sound, or not every city, but lots of them have, hey, why don't we work with each other on getting some things done, and we can be a lot more effective that way.
Yeah, so definitely. We have a lot of great peer cities, and we work quite well together.
Right. So, okay, when you're not doing that sort of stuff, you do have your main job as a Tacoma City Council member, but you've been busy there too. I mean, if you think back to the last time you were here, you've passed a accessory dwelling units ordinance, something that the legislature right now is spending a lot of time thinking that cities ought to be doing, and counties as well. You've been talking about densities and land use planning at the local level as well, which is also something the legislature is weighing in on again this session. So you've been doing a whole lot of big policy stuff at the city council level. We approved backyard cottages, as you indicated. Another big issue that is right in front of the city council over the next couple of months is the future of recycling for Tacoma, right? And all these big issues, backyard cottages, the future of recycling, where we expand and improve bus service, all these things don't just show up on a Tuesday, right? As you well know, all of these issues are months, if not years in the making. Lots of public input and committee meetings and public hearings and public outreach. So another one of these big issues that's going to be coming for a decision here soon is the future of recycling, co-mingled recycling, curbside recycling in Tacoma. Big issue. As you know, I've been actually following other communities, what they're doing with the upset of these recycling markets because of international issues, mostly in Asia, and how it affects us here at home. So that's a big issue that's going to be coming up here in May and June as well. It turns out that it might be very timely, even though I think we would all have preferred that this hadn't happened, that these international markets had not gotten a little more picky about what they were accepting. But it turns out that I've been reading stories about folks have kind of become so used to recycling that they really aren't paying attention necessarily to what they're putting in to the bins. Well, everybody embraced it so readily at first. It's just kind of become much more routine now, and so maybe this is a good educational opportunity for all of us as well to figure out about how this is supposed to work.
Yeah, we call them wish cyclers. There's a lot of wish cyclers. Everyone wishes everything could be recycled, but it's not.
Right.
I got the chance to do a tour of our facility in the Tide Flats, where all of our recycling from Tacoma goes to get sorted. It's a glorified sorting facility. With 100 people work there, and these conveyor belts, and a lot of it's automated actually with fancy robotics that sort things robotically. It's absolutely fascinating. But it absolutely matters what gets put into that bin and how clean things get sorted. And being a wish cycler, I think people might feel good about that, but it actually contaminates the stream and ends up sending more to the landfill when there are things right in the recycling pile that are not recyclable. Because at some point, the recycling center has to make a judgment call of how long it takes to sort things. And if there's too much non-recyclable things there, like a milk carton or a pizza box or a plastic bag, as an example, they'll just make the determination to landfill a whole section because it's less labor intensive, and they just have to make that judgment call. So not being a wish cycler, getting really clear about what goes in the bin and having clean recycling, the right recyclables, really, really matters. And it'll help keep costs down because it drives the labor costs of sorting all this stuff.
Right. The other component of this, though, is how much stuff we get into our homes in the first place.
Yeah.
And now it has to give you some satisfaction to know that the state looks like it's going to pass a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags.
Absolutely.
Something that cities have led the way on across the state. Tacoma wasn't the first, but we did join the group of cities that banned those a while back. Hasn't brought about the end of the world in any way, shape, or form, though I still forget to bring my bag. I usually have to walk back out to get the car to get it.
Good to get your steps in.
That's right. Helps with that. But now that it's statewide, it'll be less of a concern because the state's going to take action on that. There was another bill on other kinds of plastics that doesn't look like it's doing quite so well at the state level, but there's other plastics that aren't readily recyclable that so many products come.
Yeah.
And I particularly think of one local retailer whose products frequently are swathed in this stuff.
You buy something this big and it has a plastic that big, right?
Yeah. So that we got to figure out a way to address that part of the problem. Is that something that, I mean, the state's tried, apparently not going to make it this time around. Is that something local governments are going to need to lead on again about packaging?
I think we've seen in so many different areas that local government leads the way and shows how these kinds of improvements to people's lives can work and demonstrate that it's for the better. Plastic bags is one example. Cities led on things like giving working people paid sick leave and other basic improvements to their working life. These sorts of issues are often incubated in local government, in cities. So that's just another example. But yeah, with how things are packaged, cities actually around the country are trying to get really upstream on the issue, and really, right? It's a national issue, and so really trying to advocate to these major corporations about how they bundle things and national policy. I don't know that Tacoma, Washington isn't going to convince Procter & Gamble or some other major company about the packaging of their material, or some other major big box store that's headquartered in Kirkland, Washington, who's a great employer, by the way. But banded together, hundreds of cities can really, I think, help influence that, and we are actively part of those conversations with all of our peer cities.
Right. Well, and one other way cities can do things is cities are major buyers of things. I mean, cities helped drive the issue of green cars because cities are major fleet buyers. For example, the city of Tacoma buys Nissan Leafs.
Yep.
It doesn't just buy one or two, it buys lots of them, and has made a policy of trying to look for fuel-efficient vehicles throughout its fleet, which isn't always easy with fire trucks and other big things that we have to have. But even those are getting better and better than used to be. So that's one way cities do influence because of their big purchasers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our garbage trucks are using renewable natural gas. And so we're changing the market about how we fuel our bigger, noisier trucks. Speaking of, we have a major initiative to actually recycle the gas at our sewer treatment plant in the tide flats. Right now, it lets off a lot of methane through the process of the wastewater treatment system process. We're in the home stretch of capturing that methane gas and turning it into compressed natural gas that will fuel our garbage trucks. So it'll be a fully closed loop system, which is really exciting. So these kinds of technologies, as you said, really lead the way, prove that things can happen, and it helps private industry adopt new behaviors, and state governments get more comfortable with adopting new behaviors. It definitely paves the way.
And again, it also gives the impression that, I know sometimes the whole idea of natural gas is an issue in and of itself in this community and other places. But this is, we want to make this clear, this is natural gas being manufactured from methane gas, which is the natural byproduct of our sewage treatment system, which of course we have to have.
Yeah. And right now it just flares into the environment.
Right.
At our central treatment plant, our sewage treatment plant. So this would close it off, capture it, and use it for a transportation fuel.
So that seems like certainly a much better process than and something we can do now at a relatively low cost versus not having to wait until some new technology comes along that's operated under a completely renewable system.
Yeah. Or a mandate, right? No one's telling us to do this. We're doing it and pushing the technology to figure out how to make it work. We are pioneers here, and no one's telling us to do this. We're doing it because we think it's better for the environment, and we happen to crunch the numbers, we'll end up saving fuel with all of our solid waste garbage trucks running around the city, and recycling trucks running around the city.
We put out some methane at the landfill too, the old city landfill, which is still in operation as our recycling center, but there's some methane. We used to try to capture that, but I don't think it was economical at the time. But there's still got to be methane coming off of that. Yeah,
through these processes that happens. And so figuring out, I think we'll learn a lot from what happens at the sewer treatment plant and see if we can transfer it to other applications.
All right. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left, so I have to end this. And I know you'll be back before the year's up, but your term's up at the end of 2019. You've shown on this show how busy you are and all these other things. I mean, it seems like there's going to be a big void in your life, though you do have a full-time job in addition to this, but there's going to be a transition for you here at the end of this year, right?
Yeah. So by the end of this year, I would have served 10 years on the Tacoma City Council, and we've had some really tough times, a really intense recession that's really impacted many, many families, and certainly city services. But we've recovered, and we've gotten to work on a lot of really exciting initiatives that have move the city forward in really demonstrable ways, and it's been a real honor and privilege to be a part of those really tough days and the really exciting times in the city. So I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I will have some free time at the beginning of the next year, and we'll see what happens. But I love my time in public service and love what I've been able to do.
All right. Well, again, I'm sure we'll be back before the end of the year here with another visit. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Randy.
Our guest has been City Council Member Ryan Mello. We look forward to seeing you next time here on Inside Tacoma.